to the beach could wash all of your worries away. It's strange, before the spilling cusp of the sea, at the edge of the most vast and unpredictable natural body on Earth, we humans want nothing more but to gather in the name of relaxation and recreation. Clearly, there is something that entices us, even soothes us, about this wavy point where our land surrenders. My artists of choice seem to know what this something is. Today I'll be speaking on the coastal works of two artist couples, Australian painters Ethel Carrick and Emmanuel Phillips Fox, and French installation duo Christo and Jean-Claude. I was simply charmed by their partnerships and believe it adds another layer to the idea of natural relationships that I will constantly reference. Interestingly, these lovers created their most iconic beach scenes on each other's homelands. The Australians painted coastal France and the French installed on Australian shores. But collectively, these works offer a reciprocal commentary on the undercurrents in our nature as human beings, as it is spanned across shores and generations. In 1905, newlyweds Ethel Carrick and Emmanuel Phillips Fox moved to France, remaining there with the occasional trip back home to Australia until 1913. During these years, they frequented French beaches, completing vibrant painted studies in a broadly post-impressionist style. At this point in French history, the upper class were the primary beachgoers because the activity of sea bathing was reserved for them. Along such coastlines, adults and children would be covered from head to toe so as to avoid any interaction with sun, wind, or sand. So, what was once a place of natural horror became exclusive, even erotic, as the most dignified members of society were literally and figuratively shedding their layers. This cultural shift from land to sea, from familiar to exotic or proper to casual, is teased throughout the couple's works. Ethel Carrick best implied it using her form, a painting style she described as arrested movement. Namely, she depicted the most rigid and dignified folk through bright and flowing strokes, and embellished their scenes with children playing, as if to represent this relaxation in customs. Her husband, on the other hand, expressed the same sentiment in a far more confronting manner. Most notably, his work Le Bain, or The Bathing Hour, depicts a mother wearing loose-fitting garments as she dries off her naked daughter. These subjects take the oceanic feminine, this rising tide of cultural looseness in the early 20th century, and embody it on land. We know this because at the time it was highly inappropriate to see a woman in layers so few and unfitted, let alone for her female child to be depicted nude in painting, and yet here they were, both front and centre. Additionally, those of high polite society rarely tended to their own children. Such was, of course, the job of their maids, meaning this mother is not of such status to participate in sea bathing, and yet her child went into the water. What proves this stark illustration to be thematically intentional is the fact that Fox produced two versions of this painting. In his second rendition, the artist literally doubled down on the themes of exposure by placing the mother in a direct line of sun, despite her being the only adult pictured without protective headwear. The bathing hour therefore signifies a time both of the Foxes anticipated, an oceanic hour of boundlessness and play for France. After all, that was their norm back at home. Now, before I move on to Christo and Jean-Claude, I want to clarify that settler Australians are not the pioneers of this early beach connection. Indigenous Australians had a relationship with these coastlines centuries before the British wrongfully claimed such as their own. In fact, it is this white Australian entitlement that made the wrapped coast installations so provocative for people. Christo and Jean-Claude are a pair of installation artists that are fascinated with the ironic claims humans make on nature. Their Wrapped Coast project saw to the literal wrapping of Sydney's Little Bay in 1 million square feet of fabric. At this point in Australian beach culture, there was certainly a sense of pride that had followed the popularisation of the beach. Surfing and sea sports were of cultural importance, and the tanned beach body was the aesthetic standard. In every sense of the phrase, Australian beach culture was, and still is, colonial culture. We find the best spot, set up our flags, lament at the sight of too many tourists on our coast, and then we burn under our sun. So, despite returning the shore to its original condition, many Australians claimed that the Wrapped Coast project was an assault on nature. After all, the heavy sheets and ropes were reminiscent of a crime scene. This was a natural body bound and concealed. Thugs attacked the installation students in broad daylight as their retaliation. The press found new ways to insult the project every single morning. Art educator Ellen Waugh went so far as to say that the couple had ruined Little Bay. That is, until she visited the site herself and saw how locals made use of it as a rubbish dump. Indeed, how interesting is it that the same artists, the same people who travelled from overseas to claim occupied land as their own could not withstand the idea of travelling artists temporarily and permissively claiming that same land as their own. As Christo corrected, the work could not be an assault on nature because such is non-existent. Everything on land belongs to someone now. They just made that uncomfortable, restrictive reality more obvious. This work, alongside Le Bain, therefore shows the coastline's ironic position as a rolling wave between themes of exposure and themes of restraint. Between sand and sea, our constant obsession with nature's regulation crashes against this innate desire to be a part of something alive and uncontained. Connected to their partners through art and connected to one another through French-Australian exchange, Ethel Carrick, Emmanuel Phillips Fox, Christo and Jean-Claude all expose our position in nature as nature. Today, that sensibility takes on a whole new meaning, its importance rising along with our sea levels. It reminds me of the words of David Attenborough, who did say that the future of the ocean will be ours to control, but we won't get to see how her future ends. Instead, that'll be reserved, whether it's a story of ruin or restoration, for the young children playing on the beach today. Thank you so much.